Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first topic for today is like exceptional handling. So before we move into what it is, let's just see why we use it. So for example, let's say you have a program like which is very dynamic in nature. Like it's very dynamic and it's user driven. Like you are sending that program to different users to try it out. Right. Okay. So whenever you're building a let's say you're building a project or you're building even a software product in that sense, it goes in multiple phases, right? Like first you just build the working model, and that's called the alpha, and then you build all the dependencies and the functionalities around it to make it a little more cleaner, but there are still bugs in it, right? And that stage is called the beta, and then when you remove all the bugs, that's called the final release. So since we are all of us are like we are the tech people, right? So you guys are going to be making many projects, but not all of them are going to reach the final product stage. That's therefore you will be like most of your project will stay between the alpha and the beta stage. That's why they will encounter many bugs. And the worst thing about bugs is that if you encounter a bug, your program just stops right there. Right? Whenever you encounter an error, like whenever let's say Python or C or Java, like it throws an error, your program just stops executing. But we don't want that. We want our program to keep running even if there's an error. That's where exception handling comes in. This is the tool we use to handle the errors which the program throws at us. Okay, now let's take a look. So when an error occurs, Python's default exception handling behavior kicks in. It stops and print the program and prints an error message. Okay, so this is like very obvious. That's just for a said. So there's a specific syntax to it, all right? And in that syntax, there are four steps. These are try, accept, else, and finally. So what this does is, I will just give you a quick over brief of all four of these, which are try means inside the try block, you will have your code which you want to run. Okay, like whatever code you have, it will come inside the try block, which means that Python is going to try to run that block. Okay, like try to see the difference here. If you write the code normally, Python will run that code. But if you write the code inside the try block, which means Python will try to run the code. And what's the difference here? Like when Python tries to run that code, the difference here only is that if it fails to run the code because of some error, in that case, it will do something else. And that's in that something else, that's where the second point comes in, which is accept. So if there's an error, in that case, the code inside the accept block that will run. That will be the one that's getting executed. Then we have the else block. Okay. So the else block, so if you remember back when we studied conditional statement, right? We studied if else, else if, and else statements. So what was the else statement paired up with? It was paired up with the if statement, right? See, the first statement has to be the if statement. If, let's say, if statement A is true, else statement B is true, right? So the else is paired with the if. In this case, the else is not paired with the try. Okay, so it's not like if the try fails, then the else will happen. The else is paired up with the except block of code. So if you're trying to run a code, okay, if it fails, it will go to accept. And if there is no exception, which means that the code runs perfectly, if there is no exception, there is no error, or rather, the code inside the except block does not run. Okay, in that case, the code inside the else block will run. And then there's finally, which is like self-explanatory. Finally, the last code in the finally block will run. Like there's no exceptions. You can, if you've written finally, then the code inside the finally block will run no matter what, no matter if it there's an error or it runs perfectly, doesn't matter what happens, the code inside the finite block will get executed. So see the screen right here. Okay, this is the structure of your try and accept. Okay, so coming back to the four steps, there are four of them, but you don't have to use all of them always. Okay, depending on the program you are trying to write, depending on how you want to approach your problem, you have to use try, because like that's the first step. Obviously, you have to use that. You have to use accept. You can use else. You can use finally. You can use both of them together. You can use neither of them. That's up to you. Okay. So this on this slide. This is the structure of a uh, try accept block of code. So we have the keyword try, and then we have a statement, right? And as you can see, there's colon here, which means the next statement will come after four spaces. Okay, and this statement, if this statement runs, great. If it doesn't run, then the code inside the accept block will get executed. Okay, and this is the structure. We will just go to our IDE in a few minutes, and we will see the structure there also. All right. So this is our example here. Let's just go to our IDE. All right. So what I'm going to try to do is I will write try, and then I'm going to do print 1 divided by 0. Right? And now I'm just going to write accept, or rather I'm going to write accept exception. Okay. I will let you know why I've written accept exception instead of just accept. I'm just going to print something went wrong. All right. So tell me, can I divide 1 by 0? Is it mathematically possible?
Sir.
No.
It's not. Okay. So which means when I try to run this statement, there will be an error. And since there's an error, instead of this block of code, this block of code is going to run. So if I'm assessing correctly, something went wrong should get printed in the console. Okay, let me run this, and yep, that's what happens. Something went wrong, got printed in the output. Okay, so let's see. There's a reason why I use exception here, right? So if we go back to our example, there's just try and there's an accept. There's not accept exception here. I mean, the keyword of exception is missing here. Okay. All right. So the reason I use exception is that, see, if you use accept, if there's any error, any kind of error, doesn't matter what, that will get printed. Like the block of code inside of that accept block will get executed. But if you write accept exception, it just makes a better habit of coding, right? You guys must have, even we talk about it, and you guys must have heard it about other places also. There are good coding habits and there are bad coding habits. This is something which I consider in the good coding habit, right? Instead of writing just accept, like you can even just write it like this. I highly recommend you to write accept exception. And this exception, right? This keyword now has the name of your error within it. Like which error we are talking about? Here we are talking about the division by 0 error, right? We're trying to divide the number by 0. So the division by 0 error is now the exception here, and that's why we are printing this statement. This no, like syntactically there's no difference, and there's no difference in the execution. It just makes a better way of writing code. All right. So now maybe when you write accept exception, doesn't matter which of your error is no matter, doesn't matter which error you are occurring, it will just print whatever is in the accept block of code. Okay, so what if I want to see the error? In that case, what I will do, I will write accept exception as E. Okay, you don't need to use the variable E. You can use X, Y, Z or anything. We already know that. And here what I'm going to do, instead of printing something went wrong, I'm just going to print E. All right. So I run this, and as you can see, the output is division by 0. Yep. The output is division by 0 and the output is E. which means her exception here. Okay, so the exception is being represented by the variable of e, which means the value of exception is division by 0. So the error here is division by 0. Okay, let's try something else. Okay, let's just remove this bracket. We have a syntax error here. We will run this. Okay, all right. So it doesn't catch syntax errors. Okay, this is something new. All right. Okay. So since there was a syntax error, this except blocks stopped working because the bracket never closed, right? So it was thinking that the except exception is e still belongs within the print statement because we never closed the bracket. Let's see what happens if I add an extra bracket. If that still happens, there still should be an error. Right? There's still an error, invalid syntax. So keep in mind, wrong syntax error does not get covered using the try and accept, try and using exception handling rather instead of try and accept blocks. All right, let's get back to our presentation. So this was our first example. Now moving forward, uh, okay. So let's say you want to catch a specific error. Okay, like there are many different kinds of error like 10 or 20, like there can be many different kinds of errors that you will encounter while programming, and debugging them is a, like debugging them is also a skill, but we will talk about that sometime later. What if you want to write a program where you're anticipating an error. Okay, you know that there is one bug in the program that is consistently breaking the execution of a program, but so what you will do that in that case, what you will do, you will take that particular error and then you will write a try except block for it. You might be thinking that why is it that you only want to print, you only want to you only want to write exception handling for that error and not for different kinds of error. Like it can be up to you, but from my perspective, there can be a reason, and that's because that one bug is what you're anticipating, right? You know that bug exists, you know that's repeatedly coming there, and you can't find a solution to it. In that case, you can do it. But what if there's a new bug? What if the user finds, or what if there's a different kind of user, like the user uses a special character, or if the when the database grows very large, in that case, if you write exception handling for every error, you won't know when your program went wrong, right? If there's one particular error that you know is going wrong and you want to correct it, then you can write your program for that error. But if there's a new error, you might want to know that there's an error occurring, right? Like if a program is failing, you have to know why it is failing. Because if you don't know why it is failing, then this applying solution will just break it, will just break the product in the long run. Okay, so let's take a look. We have already have a similar example here. Let's take a look how that works. So we are going to print 1 divided by 0, and instead of accept exception, what we are going to do, accept 0 division error. Okay, let's take a look. Accept 0 division error. Okay, PyCharm already had it for us, and we are going to print something. We are going to print error detected. All right. So let's run this. You can see it printed error detected, but the other issue here is that this will only work for 0 division error. Okay, here we are trying to divide 1 divided by 0, and this will only work for this error. So what if we are going to what if there's a different kind of error? Let's take a look. Let's say uh, a is equal to, let's say, hello world, or rather we will take a better string, and b is equal to the number 10. Okay, we have a string here and then we have an integer. What we are going to do is we are going to print a plus b. I cannot add a string with an integer, right? That we already know. Either have to convert the string into an integer, which in this case is not possible, or we have to convert our integer into a string, which in this case is possible, but I have not done that. So there should be an error here. Let's run this and see what happens. Yep. So it gave me an error, right? If I had written something else here, like if I had written accept exception here, then the output would have been error detected. But since I've written only zero division error, and zero division error means it will only detect those errors which comes from a number getting divided by zero. And this is not one of those errors. That's why we get the normal error here, which breaks a program, which stops the execution of a program. Okay, let's take a look where we have type error here, right? So let's see if I can change this with type error, and let's see if we get our output as error detected. Yeah, that we absolutely got it. We got the output as error detected because we changed the type of our error which we are trying to detect. First, we had zero division error. Now we are trying to detect type error, which means type error means the mismatch of data type. Like here we are trying to add a string and an integer. Those are two different data type. We cannot add them. That's why there's a type error. Now, if we go back to, let's say, if we go back to printing 1 divided by 0, there will again be an error, which is zero division error here, right? Again, the except block didn't work because now it's looking for type error instead of zero division errors. Okay, any questions up till now?
Siddharth, if I
Yes.
if I wrote syntax error instead of type error, so what it will execute for syntax error only.
Let's take a look. I don't think it will execute for syntax error because, as we already saw, when if we have a syntax error, in that case, Python is unable to detect the except block. Okay, like we have an extra bracket here. Python is unable to detect where the except block is starting and where it is ending. So I don't think it will work, and we can just run this. And as you can see, we did try to detect for syntax error, and we have a syntax error, but Python failed to detect it because this is not one of the things that you can handle within the program. Like you cannot handle a syntax error.
So
Okay. Is there something in the chat box? Okay, let me take a look.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So the way you used the type error, what is the work of the type error there as you used it?
Okay. Can you repeat that, please?
My colleague asked syntax error. It did not work. So the type error, what is the work of the type error as it is used?
Okay. So type error is when type means data type here. Okay. Type error means that you will occur type error when there's a mismatch in the data type, right? What we were trying to do, we were trying to add an integer with a string, and an integer is a different data type, a string is a different data type. And when you try to add both of these, you will get type error because the data type of those two are different. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Omkar, can you explain your question over the mic? I'm unable to understand what you are trying to say.
Sir?
No, I'm talking to Omkar. Like,
Okay.
he has a question.
When the error is occurred, then it goes to the accept part in the try from try statement. It
Yeah,
doesn't
whenever
read the.
there's an error. Yes.
Yeah. And how can we get if there is if the statement below the error is correct? How can we access them? Will it be
Uh,
skippable?
okay. So let's say you are trying to say, uh, if I'm getting the question right, correct, you're saying that
Yes. Yes.
it will
If
go
it
to the
is
exception block at the first statement, but what about the second statement, right?
yes, it is not printed. No, it is even though it is correct.
Yep. So let's try to run this. Okay, first we have to change this to, let's say, except exception. All right. We run this. As you can see, since this statement is correct, it's still not getting printed because this statement is wrong. Yep, you're right. This is a problem. So that's something you just have to work around while you're programming. Okay. So you know that this maybe the code you write inside the try block, maybe you will be only writing those kind of sentences which are prone to errors. Okay. Like, let's say have written a program for, let's say, 200 lines long, okay? And you know that out of the 200 lines, there are 180 lines which you know will work perfectly no matter what. But there are 20 lines in which there's a scope of an error, okay? In that case, you will only write those 20 lines within the try and except blocks. The rest of the 180 lines will come in the normal part of your program. So here what you will do is you will just take this, you will cut this, and you will just paste this out right here. And then we run this, and there's error detected and hello world. You know that if you're confident that your statement is correct, in that case you can just print it. You can just print it outside of the try except block. Or if you are still not confident that if it is, what you can do is you can just make another try except block, right? Like there's no limitation to how many try and except blocks you can write. So in this case, I will run this. So again, the output is the same. First is the error detected for our first statement. And then we are and the second statement works perfectly. So we get an output of hello world and not the output of error. Okay, so this is just something you have to work around while you're programming.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Then does that means we use exceptional handling in order to ignore all the errors and continue with our programs?
Can you repeat that, please?
I said, does that mean we use exceptional handling files to ignore the errors in our program?
Yep, exactly. Right. So if you to ignore, not to, I won't say to ignore the error, but the objective is to keep the program running in spite of the errors.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Okay, so let me just comment out all of this, and we will go back to our presentation. Okay. Now we get to our else statements. Okay, we have try, except, and then we have else. So I've already, as I said a few minutes ago, first your Python is going to try to run the code inside the try statement. If that fails, then it will try to run whatever is in the except block. If that fails, then it will run whatever is in the else block. Okay, now let's just take a look at how this functions. We have try, and we are just going to take a very simple example like 1 divided by 0. Then we have except, exception, it's okay. And here we are going to print, let's say, an error occurred. And then we are going to write else, and what do you want me to print? Like I can print anything. Let's just print, what do we say?
Else block.
Okay, let's print error blocked. All right. So first we will run this, and then we will see what's exactly happening here. Okay, we run this, and the output is an error occurred. Okay, which means there was an error in this statement in sentence number 13. And since there was an error here, which means the code inside the except block got executed and not the code in the else block. Okay, this else is paired up with the except block, which means either if the except block is running, then the else block will not run. And if the else block is running, then the except block will not run. Okay, these two are paired up. So which means that if this runs, okay, the one I've selected, if this runs, then this will not run. And if this fails to run, only and only then this will run. Okay, how do we know that? Let's take an error. Let's take another example. Instead of dividing 1 by 0, we'll write 1 by 1. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Okay, it's very simple mathematical calculation. And there's no error here, right? Like 1 divided by 1 does not throw us an error, which means this except block should not be running because there is no error, there is no exception. Which means that the else block should be running. Let's take a look. We will run this, and we are right. We got 1.0 as the output. That's 1 divided by 1 is 1.0. And then we got error blocked, which is the sentence inside the else statement, right? This is how try, except, and else works. All right. So let me give you a better example which reflects the real world usage of this. Okay. What we're going to do this, let's say we are going to take an input. Okay. We're going to take x is equal to input, enter a number. Okay. And what we are going to do is we are going to add something to that number. Okay. We are going to write print x plus 3. Okay. This is our code which we are going to try to run. Here I run this. I have to enter a number. If I write 5, okay, my output is 8. 5 plus 3 is 8, and I get something which got printed in the error block, in the else statement, right? Since there was no error, the except exception block did not get executed. Only the else, only the code inside the else block got executed, and that's why we got 8 and error blocked. All right. So let me run this again. Okay. And instead of entering a number, I will write, let's say, I will write 8. Let's say I'm a user. Okay. And I'm not very well versed with technology, so I don't know how programs work. Let's say I don't know anything, but I still know what a number is, right? Everybody knows what a number is. So what I will do is instead of writing 8, I will write 8 like this. What will happen here is that I will press enter, and it says an error occurred. So where do you think is the error? Is the error in this statement or is the error in this statement? Where is the error? Is it in sentence 13 or 14? Like it does say an error occurred. Where is the error?
13.
13.
13. Okay.
Line 13.
Why is it in 13 and not 14?
Because we are inputting.
And
We
it's-
want integer as an input.
Yeah,
I cannot
you're right.
convert a string into integer.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. So we have our integer function here, right? We are trying to convert the input into an integer, and input will always be in the form of a string, but then we can convert it to an integer in case if it is a number. Here I have written 8, which is a number, but it's still in the form of a string. And when we try to convert it into an integer, we fail because like, you cannot convert. This is not something which can be converted into an integer. Yep, you're right. So the error is in sentence 30. So the program fails here and we print out the error. All right. Now we will go back to our presentation and let's move ahead. Yep, so we have already done the examples. Okay. Finally, we get to the finally statement. So doesn't matter if your program runs or if there's an error or if the else statement works or if there's an different error than you were anticipating, doesn't matter what happens, the code inside your finally block will get executed. Like that's why it's called finally. All right. Here is the structure for try, except, else, and finally. So you guys already know try, except, and else. Now all we're going to do is we will take a look at finally. Okay. And instead of taking a different example, I will just add it to this. Okay. Finally. Finally, and I will print your program is over. Let me just bring this down a little so that you can see all 4 of the statements. Okay, great. So I will run this. Okay, it's telling me to enter a number. I will write a number 15. Okay, and okay, let me run this again, and this time I will write 3 divided by x. Okay, I think this will be a more interesting program. Okay, I will run this again. It's telling me to enter a number, and I will write 15 again. Okay, and I run this. What is my output? My output is 0.2. Okay, that's correct. 3 divided by 15 is 0.2. So that's correct. And then there's no error in running while I'm running the program, which means the exception block is not getting executed. There's no print statement which says an error occurred. And since there's no, since the except block is not running, we know that the else block will be running, right? And is the else block running? Printing, are we printing error blocked? Yes, we are. Here is the output statement of error block. That's correct. and then finally we are printing your program is over. Okay, so we tried to execute something and that got executed perfectly, and so we printed this statement which was in finally. Now let's run this again. This time we will make it so that there is an error. Okay, I will enter 0 instead of 15. So 3 divided by 0, that should throw us a 0 division error. We will enter this, and what it says is, okay, we entered 0. It gave me two outputs. First is an error occurred, which means that the except exception block got executed, and that's why the else block did not get executed, right? Keep this in mind. Either the else block will get executed or the except block will get executed. And even in this case, the finally block did get executed. Like your program is over, did get printed. So again, just to say it once again, the code inside the finally block will get executed no matter if there is an error or if there isn't an error. All right. Let me just comment out all of this.
Can you please explain once again?
Okay, all of this, all right.
No, else part and finally part.
All right. So here first you have a try statement. Okay. The code inside the try statement.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes. Yes. Are you gonna say something? There's no audio from your side. All right. So.
I said, please, can you start from the beginning?
Okay. All right. I will cover all 4 of these once again. Okay. Quickly. Okay. So first we have the try statement. We have the try block. Okay. Instead of using the word statement, I'm going to use the word block. Okay. First we have the try block, and inside the try block we have some code. Okay. If the code inside the try block runs, then good, perfect. Okay, no problem. It runs. In case it doesn't run, in case there's an error, then it will go to the next block, which is the exception block. Okay, this is the exception block. In case there's an error, then instead of executing the code inside the try block, it will execute the code which is inside the exception block. Okay, so this is how the pairing of try and except happens. Once again, if there's an error, then the exception block will get executed, and if there's no error, then the try block will get executed. No problem there. Okay, and if now we get to the else statement.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
If you say if there is an error in try block, the exception will execute. So if there is no error in try and except, both of them will execute.
Yep. Okay. If there's no error in try, then
you say if there is no error in try block.
Yep.
And no error in exception block, both of them are going to execute.
They will be like we are not checking for error inside the exception block. Okay, like if there's an error inside the exception block, we just have to correct it in our code. Like you cannot handle an error inside of an exception block. That code has to be correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we are only checking for errors inside the try block and nowhere else in the program. Okay, so first you have try block, then we have except block. If the try block runs perfectly, okay, if there's no error while running the try block, then the exception block will not run. Okay, the code inside the exception block, which is this line, will not run. And in that case, this the third statement, the else statement will run. Okay, either the exception block will get executed or the else block will get executed. Okay, these two get paired up. So this is what's happening. Like if try runs perfectly, that means that the exception block will not get executed, and that means that the else block will get executed. And then we come to finally. Finally means that it doesn't matter if there is an error or if there isn't an error, the code inside finally will get printed. Doesn't matter what. Okay, did you both get it?
Yes, sir.
There's-
Excellent, yeah.
yes.
Hello. There,
Yes.
what is the use of else block then? Why we are using it?
Okay. The use of else block is to see if they like we are using the else block only when we don't get an error. Like yeah, if you're asking for the real world usage, for that I would need a hard real world problem, and I don't have that on my hand right now because like I could go back to my old programs, but for that like they are very long programs. Like I won't be able to explain it in this class. But if I find a good example for the real world usage of the else block, I will let you know.
Okay, Bhaiya.
Okay.
Bhaiya, hello.
Yes.
Sir, sir, if at all we write finally statement before the except or else statement, will it work? Will accept
Okay.
and else statements work?
Okay. Let's take a look. What happens if I just run this and let's say hello. All right. Okay. It will not run because let me just run this, and it's giving me an error. Okay. It's giving me a syntax error. And that's because whenever we write a try block, Python is accepting an except block to come with it. Okay. You cannot write something within the try and the except block.
No,
Like,
that's not my doubt.
okay.
I told you to write finally statement above except statement.
Okay. Got it. So let's take a look. I mean, I think it will throw an error because the structure is like first try, except, else, and then finally. But in that, we will just run this.
Will it show an
Let's
error?
see. Yep, it still shows an error. Like the error, as you can see, is in line 19, which is except exception. Okay. Python is saying that
Then
you
make
have
the
written,
third.
yeah, yes,
You write except next to try statement and then finally.
yeah, yep, you're right. So what the error is, what Python is trying to tell us using this error is that it's there is an exception statement, but there's no try statement before it. Right. This is what the error is telling us, that you have written an except exception block, but you haven't paired it up with a try statement. So why do you even have an exception block if you are not trying to find an error? That's what the error is here right now. Okay. Right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So, from if I heard what you said clearly now, if there is we only have error in the try block,
Yes. Okay, continue. If there is no error in the try block there.
hello?
Yes. Your audio wasn't audible.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, sir.
Yes.
Then we'll move to exception. No matter the condition, the one in the exception block will print.
No. So if there is an error, only then the exception block will print. If there is no error, then the exception block will not get printed.
Okay. If there is an error in the try block, the exception will print.
Yep. Only if there's an error, only then the exception block will print.
And if there is no error,
If there is no error, then it will then the else and the finally will get printed.
it will move to else and finally will print.
Yep. Finally will always print, but if there is no error, then the else will print. Okay. If there is an error, then the exception will print, and if there's no error, then the else will print.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. Rithik, did I solve your doubt? Or do you have more questions? Okay, great. Okay, there's a question in the chat box. What if we divide 3 by a float? And that should work perfectly. Like, let's take a look, okay? Enter a number, we will write 3.4. And yep, it says an error occurred. Okay, right. So it's unable to convert the number 3.4 into an integer. Okay, like if we wrote here float, okay, then it should be able to work. Let's try this again. We'll write 3.4, enter it, and we get the output. Okay, and we get the program runs, the error has been blocked, like there is no error, and the code inside the try block is running perfectly if we are printing it for a float. All right, let's go back to our presentation. Okay, and now we have a file handling. Okay, before we move on to file handling, I want to tell you about scoping. Okay, yesterday we had scoping in our syllabus, but we didn't get to cover it. So today, before we move on to file handling, because file handling is not a long topic, it will not take much of the time. Before that, we are going to cover we are going to cover the scoping of the variable. Okay, like there's local scoping, there's global scoping. But let's take a 5-minute break. It's 11:51. We will start again at 11:56. Till then, you can ask your questions, and we'll just take a small break of 5 minutes. All right. All right. So again, I'm on the document of yesterday on page number 8 in case and if you want to open it, or you can just look at my screen here. Like it's very simple. Okay. So the scope of the variable is defines as how long the variable is going to stay in the memory. Okay. Let's say if you're running a program, okay, and in that program you have a variable. Let's say you have an integer, okay, and if I'm correct, the integer take an integer variable takes 4 bytes of memory, right? So an integer variable, it's taking 4 bytes of memory, but we have to know for how long it is taking the 4 bytes of memory. In case the total execution of the execution time of a program is, let's say, 10 minutes, then and in that case, if a variable is in the global scope, then the variable will hold the memory for all 10 minutes, for the entire execution time of the program. But let's say if a variable is only getting access to the memory only for, let's say, 1 minute of those 10, then that's a better case, right? We are like saving up on the memory, the RAM on the long term while running the program. Okay. So basically this is the difference between the local scope and the global scope. And there's also an enclosing scope that we will take a look at what it is. Okay. So first, it's better to learn this through an example. Okay. So what we are going to do is we will go back to IDE and what we're going to do is, let's say we have a variable x. Okay. We have x is equal to 10. So what's happening here is we have declared the variable x is equal to 10 inside the main part of our program, right? Inside the main file. This means that this x is now a global variable. Okay, like this is going to stay forever. Like this is going to stay in memory from start to the end. Let's say I want to execute something on the x, like I want to change something about x. So, and for that I'm going to write a function. Okay, I'm going to write def add x. Okay, instead of let's take n. Okay, and we will just write x is equal to n. Okay? What I'm going to do is n is equal to, and I'm going to write print n plus 3. Okay, or rather let's just take x here because that will be a better way to visualize what's happening. Okay, now I'm going to do what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this program. I'm going to write add x. Okay. So let's take a look. We will run this. Let's take a look what got printed. Okay. So first we have x is equal to 10. Then we call this function, right? We are calling this function using this line. And what is that line doing? It's printing x plus 3. And 10 plus 3 is 13. Now let's see what happens if I write print x. And we will run this. As you can see, the output is 13. And the next output is 10. You might be thinking that why is that when you're printing x, why is the output 10? Like we have already added 3 to 10, right? We have already executed this line, which is 10 plus 3, which is 13. So the output of this and the output of this, both should be 13, correct? Because the addition has already occurred. So why is that it's the addition is only getting saved once and not like, why is the addition not staying consistent? And the reason for that is because this statement is only of the scope of this statement is local. Okay, this statement is in the local scope, which means that there's a point where the function starts and there's a point where the function ends. And every addition, every subtraction, every calculation, everything that you do in your program, that stays within the start and the end of the function. Okay, listen to the word, like pay attention to the semantics of what I'm saying. Okay, there's a function addition. Okay, there's a starting point of that addition and there's an ending point of that addition in the execution time of a program. And whatever we are doing in the inside of that function, in that case, what we have to do is, like whatever we are doing in that function, it stays within those parameters. It stays within the starting point and before, like after the starting point and before the ending point. And that's why when we run this, when we are calling the function, okay, we call this function, this gets printed, and then the function ends. And after that function, and like after the function has ended, uh, okay. So after the function has ended, okay, guys, give me 1 minute. All right, I'm back. So here we have the print statement, but the print statement is coming after the function has been executed, right? So since it's coming after that, whatever has happened inside of that function, that is already gone. Okay, the addition which we have done, x 10 plus 3, 13, that addition has come and that addition is gone within the statement because it's a local variable. I mean, it's a local scope variable rather. That's why when we print x, we only get x is equal to 10. All right. So now let's take a better look at the examples which we have. Okay, here. So, okay. Hmm. So, what if I want to change this? Okay. Okay. First, tell me, are you understanding up to this point? Like, why is it that the x is reverting back to 10, even though we have added 3? Like, is everybody getting this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we get to the important point of what happens if
Excuse
we
me,
don't
sir,
have
please.
this level.
Please, I didn't
Yes.
get, I was interrupted by network, please. I'm sorry.
Uh, can you repeat your last statement? I didn't get it.
I didn't get what you did. I was interrupted by network.
Okay, okay. So what's happening here is you have a variable x is equal to 10, right? And then there is a function which is adding 3 to 10. Like for let me just run this again. Okay, the output of the function is 13, right? So we are taking the number 10 and then we are adding 3 to it. 10 plus 3 is 13. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
this is the output. But
Yes, sir.
then we are printing x, but the output is 10. So what happened here? Like we added 3, right? We added 10 plus 3. So the output, so the value of x should be 13. Or if you're thinking that the print statement is not worthy enough, so let's just say x is equal to x plus 3, and we can just write print x. Okay. Okay, let's see if this runs. Right. So now we have guaranteed, like we have a guarantee that we have changed the value of x. Like we're not just printing x plus 3, we have changed the value of x, right? But even then, when we print x, we get the output as 10. So what's happening here is that the change in the value of x is happening only within a limited scope. Okay. And that's called the local scoping. Like we are adding 3 to x. Okay. We're adding 10 plus 3. But the change only happens after the function is executed, and the change disappears before the function ends. Like after, like the addition only stays inside in the memory as long as the function stays in the memory, and as soon as the function has completed its execution, that like the value of 10 plus 3 disappears, and we go back to the value of x is equal to 10. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what do I do if I want to make the change permanent? Okay. Like what if I want to make the changes done by my function permanent? I want them to stay 10 plus 3. I want to, like, whatever execution I do, I want them to stay consistent. In that case, what I will do is I will just write here global x. Okay. Now let's try to run this. Okay, there is an error here. Let me just see the example. All right. Like, all right, got it. Got it. So what the changes we have done is here we have written global x. So what this means is that the value of x is now global, which means its value of x will stay in memory even when we are running the main code, even when we are running a function, even when we are running a method. Like x will stay consistent in memory all throughout every function, because we have used the global keyword. Okay. Now let's run this, and as you can see, the output has changed from 13 and 10 to 13 and 13. Okay, this is what's happening here. So we have added x is equal to x plus 3, and this change, like earlier what happened was that this change got this change in addition disappeared after the function has completed its execution, but now this change is staying permanent. Like now this change is permanent in our memory because we have used this keyword global here. Okay, so this is how we do the local and global variables. Okay, so this was just the example. There is, if you want to read more about them theoretically, you have the data inside your documents. Okay, now we get to the enclosing scope. Okay, so what the enclosing scope does is that, like, it's not very different from either local or global variable. Let's take a look at what it is. Okay, so what's happening here is that in the example we used just now, we were declaring x before the function had even started. But that's not something we always do, right? Because sometimes we declare a function within we declare a variable within a function. In that cases, what we do is we use enclosing scope. So, right, and for the enclosing scope, we're using the keyword non-local, and like the use case of enclosing scope is very rare. Like there are not many instances where you will have the need to use enclosing scope. And I think that since we studied function yesterday, and I don't think there has been enough time for you to practice functions, right? Like in one day, you cannot learn everything about how functions work and they interact. So for now, I'm going to skip enclosing scope. Like I can tell you, but It's working on the logic of nested functions that I see here. And I don't want to confuse you because like you guys have not practiced functions yet. So I will keep this for next week. Like I know we have been pushing scoping for a while now. Like we even pushed it yesterday. We are pushing it again today. But it's important to go in the order of your learning. So for this portion and closing scope, we will do it when all of you have already practiced how functions work. All right. So now we are going back to our main presentation, and we are going to get started with file handling. Okay. File handling means using Python, you can open files, you can close files, you can add to files, you can read files, you can append to files, you can do a lot of things with any text file, CSV file, Excel file, doesn't matter what, you can do changes on it using Python. You can even make changes on a MP4 file, on a video file, but for that you need third-party libraries in Python. Okay, so first let's take a look at some examples. Okay, here we are using a text file, and before we do that, let's just make a text file. Okay, I will write. Let's see if not this. All right. So what I will do is I will open Notepad. Okay, and let me just save this. Okay, I will just save this in this folder. I will name this. Same thing as the example. All right, I will name this my text.txt. Right. We'll save this, and here I will write something. Okay, I will write hello world, welcome to P2P classes for Python programming. Okay, this is my text file. Let me just comment out all of this. This is my like I will just increase the font, okay, so that you guys can also see it better. Okay, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Let me know if you want me to increase it further. I will do it. Okay, this is our text file. Okay, so first let's go into our folder. We remember where we saved it. We saved it in the GitHub folder because that was already open. We will take this path, okay, and we already have the name of the file. So first what we're going to do is we're going to open the file, okay, and the syntax for that is f is equal to open. Inside the brackets, we are going to enter the path of that file, okay, and here we are going to do my text.txt. Okay, this is my file name. This is the location of my text file. Okay, now let's see what all we can do with it. So we have we can open it for writing, we can open it for reading and writing both, and there are different things we can do. But for now, we have just opened the file. Okay, now I will just take a look at function and I will see which one I should do first and which one I should do last. Okay. Okay, let's just do the simple reading first. So we have opened the file and now we are going to read the file. Okay, so the syntax for reading the file is f.read. Okay, and let's run this and see if there's no error. All right, so it's working perfectly. And let's just print out whatever our program is reading. We'll print f.read, and we are going to run this. So let me just pull this up. As you can see, this output and this is the same thing, right? Whatever I have written here in my text file got printed in the output here, right? It's exact same. Do you agree? Do you see any changes?
No, sir.
No. Okay, so this is what's happening here. We are just reading the file. Okay, so here we had to use two statements, right? First we had to open it and then we had to read it. So what if we want to do it in just one statement? We will go back to a presentation and we will see how we can open a file for reading it. Okay, we go back here And okay, so the default opening is for reading. Okay, and if we write here, comma r plus, now we can read the file, and now we can also write the file, write to the file rather, I would say. Okay, it's giving me an error. All right, I have to enter this here. All right. So now I can read the file, and now I can also write to the file. All right. So I have this, and if I enter instead of r plus, if I had entered w, I will be able to write, but I won't be able to read the file. So in case you're thinking, why is it so different? Like, why is it that if I have opened the file, Python should allow me to do everything, right? Like, if I have the file open through Python, I should be able to read it. I should be able to write on it. I should be able to append on it. I should be able to do anything I want. It's my Python program and it's my text file. Why is it that there's some limitations here? So the reason for this limitation is that when you're working in a team, okay, many of you will be accessing just one file. Okay, let's say if you have a team of 4 people and all 4 of them are working on the same text file, and let's say both of them have opened the file for reading and both of them have opened the file for writing, and if one guy is writing and then one guy is reading up, there's just 1 millisecond of difference, then what is getting output and like what's the output and what's the input, like there will be a mismatch there. And that way you can if there are multiple mismatches over and over, it can even corrupt the text file. That's why we have the different use cases, which so this is just about, this is the part of good coding practices, right? If you want to write, open the file only for writing. If you want to read, open the file only for reading. Open your file for the minimum amount of work you want to do. Okay, so that there are less dependency collision. I think that's what it's called. There are less dependency collisions while you're working in a team. Right. So do we have an example? We should have an example in a document. All right. So here we have some example. Let's take a look at what all we can do. Okay. R plus can do for both reading and writing, but we have already done the reading and now I'm going to show you writing. And as I said, we have to open the file only for the minimum thing we want to do to prevent access usage. Okay. So first we have done this. We have opened the thing for writing, and now we are going to write something on it. Okay. We're going to write f.write. And what do you want me to write? Like, I will just write writing something through Python. Okay. And this I have like this is what I've written, and let's just print f.read again. Okay. And we run this. Okay, right. It's not readable since, okay, let's just go back to R plus. Okay, since I have to show you the output, which means I have to write and I have to read. That's why I will go back to R plus, which means we are opening the file for both reading and writing. Now we run this. Okay, and the output is empty. So let me see, why did we get an empty output? So this is interesting. Do we have to write f.close? I guess. Now let's try to run this. All right, got it. So what's happening here is, first we open the file for both reading and writing, then we write something. But as we have written something, that the file has now been logged in the memory of which is being accessed by Python. So Python cannot write and read at the same time. Okay. So what I've done is, first I've written something, then I close the file, then I open the file again, but this time only for reading. Okay. And since I've opened it only for reading, and then I print whatever is the text in the file, and the text in the file right now is writing something through Python. So let's go back to a text file and let's see if there's any changes. I will just close this and I will go back here and open this again. Okay. As you can see, the previous text has disappeared and the new text has come. So this is the problem with writing on a Python file, right? When you just write something on a file, what happens then is that whatever your previous data was, that gets deleted, and whatever your new data is, that gets added. So what if you want to add new data without deleting the old data? In that case, what you will do is, instead of using r plus, you would use the function of a. Okay. Now let's try this. Let's try something else, writing something through Python again. Okay, we will use the function again, and now we print this. Okay, so what do you see the output is? The first statement is writing something through Python. This is the thing which we have written last time. Okay, the last time we executed this, that's when we have written this statement, and now we have, in this iteration, we have written this statement, writing something through Python again. Okay. So this, which means that since we have used a here, right? A stands for append, and append means adding. So what we are doing is we are appending something to the pre-existing text in the text file. Instead of erasing everything and writing everything over again, we are just adding something. We are just appending something. All right. Now let's take a look at some more functions. And there's read write mode. Okay, we have already taken a look at the read write mode, and for that, even then we had to close and reopen the file, right? So, all right, so it says that if we want to add multiple lines, okay. So this is not a big deal, I guess. Like you can add multiple lines, and all you have to do is you have to just enter /n. Like you guys already know that /n goes to the new line. Like if I print this, you can see it, everything goes into the new line because we are using /n. Okay, so this was very simple, and let's take a look at more. I'm on page number 9 if somebody has opened the document in their device. Okay, so closing the file, f.close. That's how you close a normal file. Like that's the easiest way to do it. Then we have flush output buffer. Let's see what the flush output buffer exactly is. Okay, so what this does is that when you have written, like when you are writing to a text file using Python, what's happening there is that the thing gets written immediately. When the moment the line of the moment the print line how do you say this? The moment the line which is writing onto the text file gets executed, that is the exact moment when the changes have been made. But there's an exception to that, and that is using the flush function. What the flush function does is that it knows what to write in the text file, but it waits. It's waiting for you to close the file. Okay, it will only add to the file when you have already closed the file. Let's take a look at how it works. So let me just okay, so take this a little down here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to write f.flush. Okay, so that is the correct syntax. Okay, and now we run this again. And as you can see, this statement has been, like, this portion was already in the text file, and this portion has been added again. And what happens if we do not close the file? Maybe like we have 5 lines here. Are we going to see 7 lines? Let's take a look. And 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we did see 7 files. Okay. So when we're using the flush function, it holds the text in the memory until either we close it or until either the file has been closed. So the thing what's happening here is that when we are opening the file again, right? We are opening the file again. The file is already open, but when we're opening it again, what Python does is that since we're opening it in a different mode, right? Here we are opening it in the append mode, but here we are opening in the read mode. What Python does, it first closes the file and then it's reopening the file, and that's why the flush function still works. Okay, now let's go back. You have already seen how closing the file works. And now we have two things left, which are creating a file and deleting a file. All right, let's take a look at both of these. Okay. Okay, so there is no spell. Let me just comment out all of this. Right. So this too. Okay. So there is no special thing that you have to do to create a file. Okay. Like there's no special syntax or a special statement or a special order you have to give to Python to create a file. In case you already have a text file, good. If you don't have a text file, Python will automatically create one for you. Okay, let's take a look how that works. I will write open f is equal to open, and I will write here, let's just C, comma. I will take a different folder this time. Okay, I will go back here, and where is my Python folder? I have my Python folder here, and let's just take this folder. Okay, in this folder I have all of your notes. I have a notes and problem for of those P2P classes. All right, so we take this, and here we are going to write this part, and then we are going to add something which will be what should we add? What should we name a file? Let's just take my text2.txt. Okay, and okay, so we are opening this file. Let's take a look at our resource so we are sure that this is what's happening, and we will open this, and let's just open it in the append mode. Okay, in the append mode, let's just write A. Okay. Right now, I do not have, even if I zoom in, right now I don't have any file with the name of my text2. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just run this program. Okay. There's Unicode escape. Okay, now it should work. Yeah. The Unicode escape error, if you want to know what that is, like, do you guys want to know what the Unicode escape error is? Like, it's not related to what we're doing right now, but I can still explain it to you. So, should I do it?
Yes, sir. If you can explain that in short.
Okay. So let me just bring out the error again. Okay. Here what we have is, we have Unicode escape error. It can't decode bytes in position 13 and 14. Okay, let's just take. Okay, so at the 13th position, what we have this slash, right? And then we have this n. Then we have this n, right? N of notes. What's happening here? What does slash n means? Right? You guys already know slash n means go to the next line, right? Like if I have a string and I'm writing slash n, that means Python already understands. That means go to the next line. And here also have a slash n, which means what's happening here is that Python is trying to go to the next line, but it can't right now. Why can it not go into the next line? Because this is not a string. This is the location of a file. Like I cannot go to the next line in this string of a location of a file. So Python is getting confused. Like Python is getting very confused here. Like it's unable to understand, like, what do I do? Do I go to the next line? Do I open the file? Like if I'm going to the next line, then I'm unable to open the file because the location has been broken. Like Python just get confused and it gives me a Unicode escape error. All right. In that case, what we have to do is we have to tell Python to ignore it. We have to tell Python that Python, this slash n doesn't mean anything. Like this slash n is not a command for you to interpret. Okay, this slash n does not mean you have to go to the next line. How do we do that? We just enter an R here. Okay, we enter an R and then we write the string. And what's the difference between writing R? This R means it's converting the string into a raw string. So in a normal string, you can enter, you can do commands within the string. Like for example, we had slash n here. We had slash n. Similarly, we have slash t for entering a tab space for it at a time. Similarly, we have multiple commands. Like we saw it in the first or the second class, if you remember. That's what we can do inside of a string. But when we add this character R here, this R converts a string into a raw string, right? And inside a raw string, none of those commands work. You can write /n/t, anything you want to write. That will not work. Why? Because the string has been converted into a raw string. Like the Python will take whatever the string is as it is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there are commands within it or not. That's why when we enter R here and then we try to run this, as you can see, there is no error. Okay. And we have this file mytext2.txt. Let's go to our folder and let's see if we have a new file. Okay, I will just click this. Okay, as you can see this, right? You can see this file here, mytext2. This file, mytext2, has been added. This wasn't here before, right? We saw just a couple of minutes ago, this file wasn't here. But since we ran this statement, Python has created the text file for us. Okay, this is how we create a text file. Now we can, let's say I will write something here. I will write f.write. I will write something. I will write open and see. Okay, this is my statement I want to run. I'm just going to run this, and now I'm going back into my folder, and now I will open this text file. And as you can see, this text open as C has been already added into the text file, even though I never touched it. I never opened that file up till now, and when I open it, the sentence which I've written through Python is already there. This is how you can create a text file using Python. Now we go to the deletion of the file. Now we'll see how we can delete a file. Okay. So the syntax for that is also very simple. Okay. So what we are going to do is let me just remove all of this. Let me just remove the commands. I still want my path here, right? I still want to execute it on the path. Let me just take this in my clipboard. I will just cut it. All right. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to import OS. OS means operating system, right? So for let's say if you were for deleting a file, you need permission from Windows, right? When you delete a file, you always delete a file through, let's say you can delete it through Control Panel, or you can delete it through a File Explorer, right? And both of these are programs made by Windows, so you always need Windows permission if you want to delete a file. That's why what are we doing? We are importing OS. OS means operating system, which means in this, when we import OS, we get those permissions from Windows to delete a file, or even to access. We can access file without it, but now we get permission to delete that file. And what is the command? The command is os.remove bracket colon, and here we can write here we have our location of a file, and again we have to write R here to convert the string into a raw string. Okay, please mute yourself, Ishita and Sashwat. Okay, great. So we have os.remove, and what are we removing? We are removing mytext.2txt. We are removing this file. Okay, now we run this. Our program got executed. There was no error. Okay, now let's get back to our folder. Do we still have the file here? Nope, we don't. Right, the file has disappeared. We still have this file open here, and that's because it's in the RAM. If I close it, the file has disappeared forever because the file has been deleted, right? We had this file in this location right here, but now it's not there. That's because we have now deleted the file. Okay, so what all have we done? What all have we done in file handling? We learned how to open the file. We learned how to close the file. We learned how to delete everything in the file and write over it. Like if you open the file in the writing mode, you will remove everything and then you will write on top of it. It's also known as overwriting. Then we saw the append mode. If you open the file in append mode, what it did was you can add, when you write, it gets added to the pre-existing text in the file. Then we saw how to delete. Then we also saw how to delete the file. All right. So this is all the things that we did. There are more things here, right? You can, we also created a new file. Okay, and the only thing that we didn't do was read and write, right? When we tried to execute the read and write, we had to close the file first and then we had to reopen it to be able to read the file. So if you can find a better way to, I'm sure there's a better way to do it. If you can find it, send it in the WhatsApp group. Okay, it will help me. It will help everybody in the class present here. Okay, so we still have some time left, so you can ask me a question, but we are done for today. Thank you everybody for attending another class. It was great again. The questions today were also really good. And thank you everybody for coming. And that's it from my side. If you have any questions, you can just ask me right now because we still have a lot of time left.
Can you explain flush again?
Flush, right? So let's take a look at the theory of flush. Okay. So what a flush does it like as it says here, when you are writing something to a text file, the data is not immediately written in it. Okay. So let's say you have written a file, like you are writing a sentence to a file. I'm not talking about the flush. I'm talking about normally when you have written something to a file, uh, it gets let's say you're using the write function, then the text gets added to the file or it's get overwritten to the file. But there's something called the but before, like after you have executed the write function and before it has been added to the permanent hard disk memory, for a moment it stays in the flush buffer. Like flush buffer, you can also understand it like a Python program is running in the RAM, right? So the part of the RAM in which a Python program is running, that's what you can call a buffer. Like this is not exact definition, like, but just for the sake of understanding, you can understand it like this. Okay, so what's happening here is that when you flush the buffer, like I have a memory of what flush exactly does, but I'm not 100% sure about it. But so I don't want to go in depth of it because I think if I go even a little deeper now, there's a chance I will be telling you the wrong thing. So give me a few hours and I will send you the correct information because I'm 90% sure, but I don't want the wrong information to be presented to you.
Okay, sir.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
What are the real life applications or uses of file handling?
Oh, okay. So file handling is probably the most used thing in the real world, right? Like when like doesn't matter, like even if you go once, like let me just stop presenting. Right. Even if you go one step higher, right? Like if you're building a program, let's say you're building program which you get in your college labs, okay? You get the ones you get in your labs. They are like at least in the first year, what is like build a calculator, build a summation function. Like those are relatively easy programs. Whenever you step into the process of a real project, and I don't mean a big project, like even a small project, as soon as you step in that territory, you will need file handling because you will need a database, right? You will need to access database, you will need to change the database. And I don't mean huge database. Let's say even if you are building a small machine learning project, you will need to access the data set which you have collected to train a machine learning model. In that case, you will need to access what? You will need to access the data, and for that you will need to use file handling. Like file handling is the most used real world application in Python. Like it's used in everything. Okay, Miran, the read function works one line at a time. It doesn't work character by character. It reads one line and then it reads the next line. It reads one line at a time. So I will just show you this using an example. Okay, let me just share this again. This will be interesting. Okay, so let me go back to IDE, and I'm going to remove this. Like don't worry, like if someone has left, they don't need to worry about it. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first I'm just going to, since I've already deleted the file, here I will just paste my old paths. All right. Okay, so what this will do is this will just create the file. Let me run this. Okay, it's saying there is, okay. Quick open that, append. Okay, this doesn't work. Will this run? All right. So now I should have my file here, right? I have my file here, and I will write something. Okay, I have written, and let me save this. Okay, I have written 4 lines, right? As you can see on the screen, I have written text in 4 lines. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write f dot read line. Okay, instead of f dot read, I'm going to write f dot read line. What f dot read line is doing, for let me just print this. Okay, let me just print f dot read line. This is really interesting. I will print this. Okay, it's not readable. Like why is, okay, I have to open it in the, now it should work. All right. Like I write what I did was I printed f dot read line, and what was the output? The output was the first line here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I will use the same function, print f dot read line. All right. I want you all to take a guess what will happen now. Like, will I just get the same output once again? Like I have got OWS at GW. Like, will I get the same line printed again, or will I get something different?
Second 2 line.
Okay, so I'm getting both response, same line and the next line. Let's run this. I run this, and as you can see, I get the second line as my output. So what happening is when we are reading a file, Python reads it 1 line at a time, right? So therefore, when we're reading the first line, when we're telling Python to read a line, it's reading the first line, and when we're telling Python to read the line again, then it's reading the second line. And if I use the print statement once again, it will read the third line. So there is a built-in counter within Python that is incrementing each line at a time. All right. All right. Anything else? All right. If there are no questions, great. You can even ask a question on WhatsApp or in the group, or again at 7 o'clock. Okay, at 7 to 7:30, we will meet again at Discord in the voice channel. Yesterday's voice chat was really good, and we even had another voice channel at late in the night. Okay, so around 7-8 people were there. Like Parveez can tell us how good it was, how good both of the sessions were yesterday. So join us there. Like it's really good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. You all can leave.
Siddharth, there was a question in the chat section. Omkar just put a question.
Okay. Permission denied. Okay, this is interesting. So yeah, you will have to look into your laptops. Like this is not a Python question. Like this is more related to how Windows is working. Like I will send you. I came across this a similar problem, and I think there's a very good solution in this. Like if you just Google this, yes.
Could you just show them how to use Stack Overflow?
All right.
Like
So,
everyone, they must know how to use that. Like this type of question, they can put in the Stack Overflow. And they will
exactly.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
even okay. So I'm sharing my screen again. Okay. What I'm going to do is, I will, as you can see, I'm just going to take the error from the chat section, right? I'm just going to take this, copy this. What I'm going to do is let me just open Firefox because that's uses Google. Like I use different thing, okay? And I'm just going to print this error, okay? What do you see the first output? The very first result is of Stack Overflow, okay? Let me click this. As you can see, someone else has had the same problem which you have had, which is permission denied error, okay? And there are 14 different answers to this, like 14 answers. There's a very high chance that the first answers will work for you. If that doesn't work, there's a very high chance the second answer will work for you, okay? If that doesn't work, there are 14 different answers which you want to try. I will just copy paste this link and I will send this to you on WhatsApp. So you can check this out from there. But make it a habit to ask questions on Stack Overflow, answer questions on Stack Overflow, and If you don't want to do either of them, there are many questions which are already present on Stack Overflow which can help you a lot. And the best thing about that is the more you use Stack Overflow, like Stack Overflow uses a system of reputation points. Like in the beginning, when you make a new account, you have access to a very small portion of that site. Okay, Stack Overflow is a huge site. Like I can't tell you how many functionalities it has. When you make a new account, you will have access to only like 3 or 4 of those functionalities. If you ask a question, your reputation point will increase by 3 or 4. Then you will unlock more permission. If you answer a question, if your answer gets upvoted, like your reputation points will keep increasing with time, and you will keep unlocking more and more functionalities of the site. And like I can't tell you how important Stack Overflow is if you want to be a serious programmer.
Guys, this is the time you must know how to debug your own code. Okay, so this is how only you could know how to run a big program. Okay, so you must know how to debug your own code, and once you will start using Stack Overflow, you will get to know how to do that. Okay, so go and just explore that website.
Yep, great advice. All right, so you can either leave or you can keep asking questions, and we will just answer it. All right, so Parvesh, should we end it? I don't think that